All right, I'm going to mute again.
Yes.
Well, hi, this is Lynn and Teresa Walding. We're here with Advancing Nurse Coaching, and we're really delighted that you were able to join us today. In fact, the reality is that connecting with each other as nurses is what will move the profession forward. We have so much to share. We have so much insight. We have so much creativity. And what is changing, transformation is changing nursing. That sounded backwards. What I meant to say is that by changing nursing, we will transform healthcare. And it's just such a delight to be here now, especially with you today. And I can hardly wait to get into our topic. Teresa, would you like to introduce yourself at this point?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Teresa Walding. I actually live here in Central Texas, and I've been a nurse for about 30 years, and I feel like I've seen it all. And yet I have noticed that finally, one of the dreams that I've always had are nurses are coming together to support each other. We want to be part of a community that cares for our patients, that cares for each other, and really raises the vibration of healthcare in general. Um, there's been a lot of things that are happening in the world that seem to really um, appear to influence us in maybe not such good ways. But I'm talking to so many nurses right now who just have a heart for people, a heart for their patients. And we want to do it better. We want to enjoy each other, and we want to enjoy our work. And that's what I'm doing now, is helping nurses do that and enjoying my work as well. So I think what we'll be talking about today is separate realities. So I'm really excited to get into that here in a minute.
Think we're ready.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and give me 1 second to put it so we can all see it better. And there we go. Navigating separate realities, understanding how thought works. For any of you who have listened to us for a while, you know, we talk about thought a lot. And the reason for that is that's where we live. We all have that internal dialogue. We all live our life from that perspective, but not very many people really stop to consider what that really means. So by understanding how thought works, we want to shine the light here for a few minutes about what that means for us as human beings, for caregivers, and really truly how it helps us live our life better. So today we'll be talking about foundational principles. The names of those principles are mind, consciousness, and thought. We'll be talking about what is separate realities really? What does that really mean for us as human beings? I think we have an intellectual idea about what that is, but when we bring in this inside out versus outside in aspect of what separate realities mean for us in our work and in our lives, it shines a new light on how we can live a life of passion, of enjoying and embracing the moments of our lives, and dropping judgment and criticism of others. And when we can do that, we actually have the ability to change everything in our world. And we can change cultures anywhere we live, the one in our own family, the one at work, and the one with our community. So Lynn, would you like to start us off?
When we had a holistic nursing conference back in 2015, our speaker was Dr. Keith Blevins, and he brought to that conference something that had not been previously shared. It was described as the implications, not applications. And of course, nurses are very familiar with applications. We are doing this, we're doing that always, all day long. And for us to stop and think for a minute, what would an actual implication be versus an application? So I'll just say that as by way of introduction, he brought us the three principles paradigm. And this paradigm is so groundbreaking because it provides an explanation of mental life, which is deeper than anything that we've known so far through psychology specifically. But this new paradigm is assisting people all over the world in more than 63 countries to not only eliminate their trying, their application, their willpower, but through insight to have the opportunity to see how we truly do experience life.
So we wanted to touch today on the three principles, how they work. In the most simplistic form we can talk about it, it's you have a thought. It creates a feeling inside of you, simultaneously creates that feeling. And you express that out into the world as your reality. I know we know this intellectually, but when we begin to see how, oh, every situation is like that, it's not just an idea. It's truly just the way we communicate, the way that we experience life. And shining the light on this aspect of ourselves, truly, it is about us. It gives us a locus of control, a sense of, oh, I can actually know that I think, and I can see the responses or reactions of my thinking in my real world. And when we come from that perspective, as we'll talk about here shortly, it gives us a sense of calm, a sense of peace, and even a place where we can really come home and sit with ourselves and go, how do I really want to live? Knowing that this is what's happening gives us this easy button, if you will, of being able to live life from this perspective that gives us the calm that we're looking for, decreasing our stress and anxiety, and allowing us to have better relationships. Another way to look at it, I call it a perfect paradigm because in the work that we're doing, it is the only paradigm. It's the original paradigm that's always been here, that's always worked this way. But we got off track somewhere. I think when we went on to look at behaviors that showed up after the thinking, and we started wondering how that happened. We missed the boat, so to say, on really understanding the human experience. So the first principle, mind, the source of all knowledge. Some people call it God, spirit. It's that spiritual nature that runs the universe. It's not just about my thought. It's about the source of all knowledge of how a tree grows, of how airplanes fly, of gravity. It's the source of all of that knowledge. But we have consciousness, which really truly makes us aware that we think. That's a different perspective. Most people don't think about it like, oh yeah, I know I think. Of course we do. And then we dive deep into our own thinking about everything in our life, and we're aware of that too. But we don't always consider that other people are doing the same thing with all different reasons for why they think or believe the way they do. So this power of thought is the fact of thought. It actually doesn't have anything on it until we put our thinking to it. It's a neutral. All of these words, mind, consciousness, and thought, are actually one thing, that are a neutral power that human beings use to live life. I find that fascinating because even though I knew I was a thinking, living human being, was caught up in my thinking a lot. And maybe in another class, we'll talk about what that means for us as far as stress and anxiety. But I think you'll see in separate realities a way to decrease that stress and anxiety just by understanding how this system works. So the power of thought is the fact of thought before it takes form. And 100% of our feelings arise from our personal thinking. So we call it, our experience is thought taking form in the moment. We don't have to do anything to have thinking. It's automatic. It comes to us, occurs to us. It is us. But this is the operating system that we're all using, every single human being in the world. And it gives us something to put a foundation on that allows us to take responsibility for ourselves.
I
Would you
love,
like to add anything?
yeah, I love it that we don't have to continue looking for explanations of how things work, because being the perfect paradigm that it is, the only paradigm, all of the explanation of how things have happened in our past, or the way that things are today, the way that things will be tomorrow, can be understood through I'll describe it as a simple paradigm, just these three words: mind, consciousness, and thought. And yet it is a study that we will be about for the rest of our lives. It's self-correcting. It tells us where to look if we feel uneasy, if we feel challenged, if we are sad or disappointed. It's a system that is very user-friendly and has always been there for us, and is, well, it's paving the way for the future for all of mankind.
So that brings us to the topic of the day, separate realities. We all live in a separate reality from each other. No one thinks like us, and we cannot have their thoughts, and they cannot have ours. And we know this most of the time. We know we don't think alike. I mean, if we think about how we communicate with each other, we know that we are all living in a separate reality. The beauty of knowing this as a fact, based on the system that we just talked about, that this is an internal dialogue. This is where we live our life. And yet it is through our communication and through our voice and our actions that we experience life. And I wouldn't have it any other way. And I think it's fun to think about new and interesting people and all of the ways that they've thought about life and the experiences that they've had. And to really settle down and to really get curious about someone else's life, about how they think and how they believe, knowing that you're doing the same thing. One of our friends, he talks about it as, it's like the game of life. You're playing a game and they're playing a game, and you're watching each other play the game. One of you may know that you're playing the game and the other may not. And that's where we have conflicts or disagreements or agree to disagree, and we have a lot of judgment too about what other people think, say, or do. But when we start beginning to realize, oh, they're using their thinking, because we all have access to the exact same principles, it might cause us to pause and go, I wonder how that got there and why they believe that way or think that way. And then there's those times where this happened to me this week. So we had some doctor's appointments, and I had in my mind what I wanted to hear after doing all the tests. We'd had a minimum of 6 doctor's appointments with all the tests, and it was time for results. And I show up to the doctor's appointment, and there's no answers. And, oh, by the way, there's going to be 2 more tests. And I was thinking to myself, what is wrong with this system? The healthcare system is broken. Why can't we all get together? Why can't we all talk together and find out, problem solve and find out what's happening? And as I sat in the room and I realized because I'm a nurse and I have watched this forever, it's the first time she's seen the information. She has no idea everything that we've been through for the last 2 months, from an ICU stay to coming home to the fear of almost dying to, so many emotions coming up. And so I was really, really wanting some answers. And I spent a day thinking about how broken the system is. And the next day I woke up and I was like, "Ugh, I'm one of those people." The person that I would have to deal with at work, my first time seeing this person, not realizing everything that the patient had been through to come to this place to see me. And I had empathy for the provider. She's doing the best she can. And while I would really like for everyone to talk together, I think there's a gap here that we as nurses can really fulfill and help people and help ourselves by allowing us to recognize those kinds of circumstances come to us through thought. And a new plan has emerged that was not based on that what's in it for me thinking. So, it shows up in a lot of ways, and I'm very grateful to be able to have that compassion for the providers that we're working with.
Oh, Teresa, what a beautiful example. And I guess just going back to the paradigm, isn't it just so good to know that we actually do live in an ordered universe, that it's not just all chaos, and that by knowing about mind, consciousness, and thought, these things can be unraveled. We can see after the fact or in the moment. Insight is very valuable in both cases. Sometimes people have insights about things that happened 10 years ago, and
Yeah.
sometimes things that happened yesterday. It's it's a system that is always with us, is very useful, and is never ending. We'll never be without answers when we understand the way the paradigm works.
Yeah. And the one thing I want to say about the paradigm, when I was saying that it doesn't matter what you think is true, and all of the feelings are available to us. I don't have to judge that I felt not heard or listened to. I felt it. But it informed me in a different way, knowing that it was my thinking about it, than if I had blamed all the healthcare providers for not doing my expectation. And so I think there's value in knowing that your feelings do guide you, and one is not better than the other. It's not about positive thinking, although positive side of life is where we enjoy our life more. Every emotion is available at all times.
I guess just saying that thought is a neutral power may explain
Yeah.
that we have the ability to use it in any way we want. And that's our choice.
This comes to separate realities, and I want to spend some time on this slide because I know it's a lot of words. And I want to hear beyond these words to what the implications or what the meanings might be for you if you understood completely, which I know many of you do. But sometimes we all forget. So for some of you, it will be a reminder. But the outside in, when we say those words, we're talking about, we're thinking about life without thinking in the moment included. Like thought in the moment, it looks like a circumstance or a person is responsible for the way that we feel. We are also at the same time acknowledging it's our thinking and we get to have it, even if we don't recognize that that's what's happening. So when we believe in the outside in false paradigm, separate realities are not obvious to us. When others do not think like us, we think there is either something wrong with them or us. This illusion creates unnecessary outside in thinking and reactions, and we stay trapped in the illusion that we could or should think and feel the same. An example of that is, I've seen this so many times in my career. People, have you ever had the people who talk under their voice, under their breath as they're doing things? And they're saying things like, if they would just listen to me, everything would be okay. If they would just do it like this, I wouldn't have to do this other thing. I don't understand why they can't do it this way. I know we've all heard those things. We even say it to our children, just do it like I told you, and then everything will be okay. Well, when we do that, we disempower people because, number one, it can't work your way, as we'll see in a minute, because it doesn't make sense to the other person. That's a beautiful thing to recognize, like, oh, I'm feeling my thinking in this moment. And we haven't considered what the other person might be thinking. So inside out means that we recognize that it's our personal thought in the moment creating our life. Can you feel the difference in how nice and easy that is? We don't waste time being dismayed that others don't think like us. It's the most normal thing in the world. This puts us in a position to respect and embrace diversity rather than be annoyed or afraid of it. We understand I actually cannot have your thoughts and you actually cannot have mine. No one can think the same as anyone else. As much as I may think it would be better if you would think like me, it cannot happen. When we recognize this, we find ourselves able to listen and communicate more effectively. And
Wow.
that came so crystal clear one day in a very difficult conversation because I realized I wasn't listening to what the other person was saying because all the power is in the listener. If I don't hear what you're saying, it doesn't mean a thing to me. That's one of those places where we must slow down and become present to our conversations, to ourselves, and truly to our lives. We are in such a big hurry to get somewhere. We're actually missing the best parts.
Able to listen. That is
Able to listen. Yeah.
Mm.
It took a while, and sometimes it still does, to slow down long enough to really recognize that internal dialogue. We have separate realities between each other, but we have separate realities within ourselves. Many people, me included, kind of compartmentalize our lives. Like, this is my family and this is my job and these are the things I like and our personal spiritual relationships that people have. Those are all part of the same thing, but we seem to focus on them differently. Or we think we have a problem in a certain area, and that may be true. Because if we think that there's something for us to learn there, we'll look at it like a problem. The inside out, outside in discriminator, especially in separate realities, gives us a way to navigate that.
I love, we do not waste time being dismayed.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm still dismayed. Like, what? Why did that happen? Why is that happening right now? And it's kind of fun in our family, since we've had these conversations for quite a while now. I was in the car with my daughter one day and she was just in a bad mood and she was having a bad day. And I think I said something like, you're kind of outside in right now. And she goes, I know. And I just want to be there. She goes, just because I know doesn't mean I don't feel this way. And I was like, you're right. You're right. And my response was to be quiet, not to fix it, not to judge it, but just to have that presence and just be okay with that.
You were able to listen.
Well, I heard, I don't think we often hear those words. Well, especially nurses, we like to fix things. we like we like to go, I have an answer for you. But what a beautiful thing to just let people have that and then find common ground, even in the separate realities of, okay, I can see that you're not thinking about this like me, but we have this problem to solve, whether it's a work problem or a home problem, doesn't really matter. How can we find a solution to this? Now we can actually listen to each other. Like, oh, well, maybe you have an idea that I've not thought about before. I think that's what I love about this younger new generation. I think what they call them Gen Zs, maybe. Their problem solving is completely different than mine. And I find it fascinating to hear, well, there's an app for that. If we went over here and did this, we could do, we can do it so much quicker. They're so adaptable to new technology or new ways of doing things. And I think that's a completely separate reality for sure. But there's a common ground that we can find where a part of nursing that has the wisdom that's not in the app, that's not in the book, that occurs to us in real time, in real life, as we take care of real people. To me, there's beauty in that. I remember being a very new nurse, and while I had taken care of a lot of people in my life, it was different being in the leadership role in nursing and beginning to listen to the patients and the wisdom that they have.
Oh, yes.
I've taken care of a lot of elderly people. I was a head nurse on a skilled nursing for a while at a hospital. So we still did a lot of blood transfusions and different stuff. But the stories they told me and the things that they did saved me a lot of time in my life. Because I could remember, she goes, oh, if I were you, I wouldn't do that. I did that once and this is what happened. She goes, this is what I learned. And I learned to listen to what they were saying. And I also learned to listen to their stories. A really fun story about separate realities was they're both gone now. They became my friends. And I took care of her for, I think it was at least 6 weeks. It might have been more. She had an infection that we were trying to heal up. And every morning I'd come on the floor and she'd go, you have to see me first. I want to see what it looks like. So I would. And so when she healed up and went home, 3 days later, her husband came and took her bed in my unit. And, he went home and he fell and hit his head and put a dent in the wall in the bathroom. So he was coming for some rehab. And they were sitting there reminiscing about being in World War II, being evacuated from Amsterdam, and telling me like every little detail. It was fascinating because I'd never heard anyone that I knew talk about it. And she looked up at me and she goes, where were you when all that was happening? And I had to laugh and I go, I wasn't even a thought. And just the look on her face was like, oh yeah, you wouldn't have been there. And yet in that moment, her reality in her remembering parts of her life that she could share with me was really wonderful. And I think, wow. And I learned a few things from her story, which, people love. We love to hear each other's stories.
Well, and I love the second sentence, Teresa, because it's so universal for all of us. It says this puts us in the position to respect and embrace diversity rather than being annoyed or afraid of it.
Yes.
It's all of us all the time. to be able to have an appreciation and respect. Wow. That could change the world.
Well, I think it does change the world every time we know that. Being able to offer empathy or knowledge or listen to their wisdom, it's all here for us. But we're so busy in our mind wanting people to think or do like us that we miss that opportunity to really learn and grow from each other.
Oh, thank you, Teresa.
So navigating separate realities, realizing that we truly live an inside out nature of life. It's never been any other way. We, through our own personal thinking, live our life. But it looks to us most of the time like life coming at us. If we can make that internal shift to recognizing, oh, I am a thinking human being, and I have the responsibility to choose the type of life I want to live. And unbeknownst to most of us, when we feel the stress and anxiety of life, we're actually blaming other circumstances or people for the way that we feel. I like the commercial. A few years ago, there was a commercial of this man sitting on the couch watching TV, just sitting there, not interacting with his wife. And she's running around behind him, doing the laundry, playing with the kids, doing the dog. And every time she walks by, she's like, is there something wrong with me? Does he not love me anymore? Is my marriage failing? And it was kind of humorous because he's just sitting there, and the final thought bubble was, I wonder what's wrong with my motorcycle. And the first time I saw the commercial, I laughed because I was like, how true is that? We make up stories about why things are or are not happening for us. That's when I told my kids, please use your words and ask, hey, are you okay? What's going on with you? But not having anything on it, not saying, why are you acting that way? There's always a reason. If we're caught up in our mind and it appears that we're having some sort of suffering, we probably are. So that's recognizing that thought feeling connection, like, okay, these are my thoughts, and I'm either feeling insecure or happy or sad or glad or joyful. Well, you can't have two feelings at the same time. You can't think love and feel hate, and you can't feel hate, think hate and feel love. They always go hand in hand. So when we recognize that, we can stop judging ourselves and others and recognize it's just the human experience. And I know a lot of people feel they need to explain themselves all the time. Like, well, I feel this way because. The reality is you don't. You get to feel however you feel. And that internal guidance that you have of knowing I am the thinker of my life. I'm going to get exactly what I'm thinking about, and it's okay. So understanding these separate realities, and I know this was a very quick overview, and we'd love to have a longer conversation with you about that. You're welcome to connect with us. But understanding this one implication, separate realities, it improves our lives exponentially. It just takes so much thinking off our mind. And it's almost like we stop thinking about the things that don't make sense anymore. If we know this is the way the system is set up, we don't think about how it's not set up. And in that way, it's almost like magic. We just don't go there because we don't need to. We figured it out. We cracked the code, if you will, that if we can really see that every single human being is living in a separate reality of their own thought, of their own making, we can now have empathy. We can love people through difficult circumstances, and we can begin to have conversations that we've never had before.
I love that third one, Teresa. We stop judging ourselves and others. It's so personal. I mean, it's our families, it's our work colleagues, it's our state, our nation, it's every country in the world. There's no even just that one sentence um for people universally to have insight about stopping judging would just be huge. But the way that it actually works is not that you're trying to bite your tongue and not say something. The way that it works is it doesn't even occur to you to judge. It
Yeah.
doesn't even come that way. I remember this was shocking to me. My mom was one of those people that didn't judge, and I hadn't noticed. I mean, it was just a number of years ago, maybe 10, that my sister-in-law mentioned that my mom never said a bad word about anybody. And I was shocked by that because I had never noticed. That was just the way mom was. She wasn't trying not to say something. She simply saw the good in people every time. Every time. She never judged because she never thought a judging thought. It was no effort on her part not to judge. She simply didn't. What she saw was that there was a healthy person in there, regardless of their behaviors, and she identified with the health that she saw in that individual. And judging was completely out of the question because she only loved.
I love that. I aspire to be like that. And you know, truly, I think so much more so than I've ever been in my life. You know, we're all innocent. When you have a misunderstanding about how life works and especially separate realities, we're doing the best we know how. And I think that's where classes like this and talking with each other and learning about how we do work psychologically makes a difference. It's it's really the best of both worlds, the personal world and the world you live in, that we really recognize them as one. It's one thing. Work, life, family, it's all one thing. And it all comes to us through our own personal thought. And I think on a certain level, we actually know that. We do know that. But having a conversation like this really shines the light where we can remember more often. So in summary, we just like to touch on, you know, the implications of separate realities. When we know about separate realities, we actually suffer less. We begin to really recognize what that means in our life, and we stop going over and judging others for the way they think and take a look at ourselves. We don't entertain thoughts that are not true about others. I have a friend who, I love the way she says this. There was a colleague that came in and told her she didn't know how to do her job, but she had actually trained the person to do the job. And she described it as a tornado of thought about that comment. And because she was taking the course, she said, I just stopped and I sat at my desk and I was fuming. And she said, the more I thought about it, the more quiet I got about it. She said, I realized what I was upset about is what I thought she thought about me. And come to find out, the lady came back next day and apologized. And she goes, you know, I'm really sorry about yesterday. I was having a really bad day. It wasn't about you. But we've all said things sometimes that weren't true about others. And the impact that it has on us, knowing where our experience is coming from or not knowing, are two totally different things. But we're not surprised anymore that others don't think like us. And it gives us like a breath of fresh air, like, oh, I don't have to worry about what others think. I don't have to you know, entertain the thoughts of if they would only think like me, everything would be okay. And we just naturally stop thinking in ways that don't make sense. If we know something is not true, we all have a truth meter in us. We want to know what's true. So when we find out what is true, it doesn't make any sense to think about it in any other way. And what this does is really promotes clarity and an ease of life. It truly is the easy button every time we see it.
Yeah, if you know that it's not possible, you spend less time there.
Well, that's for sure, because or when you go there, you think, oh, look what I've created here. You know, I don't really want to be right here right now. And I think it helps us have that internal locus of control. And you know, you can do it in the moment. You don't have to go in the bathroom and meditate. You just go, oh, look what I've been doing. And you'll notice how you feel in your body when you're thinking in ways it doesn't work. You know, you'll have that stressful feeling, or you'll have that frustration or anger. And when you recognize it's you, it eases that. And I think who doesn't want life to be a little bit easier? So we'd love to invite you to join us and take a little bit deeper dive into what principles mean for our lives. We have what we're calling the next generation of nurse coaching using these principles. There's actually 8 implications. We'll be talking about those through the next several months, one for each month. So you can get a real feel for what it would be like to live from this perspective, or it is a paradigm shift. It's saying we truly have a foundation we can count on to live life from. We have a name for it, the 3 principles paradigm. 3 principles are the mind, thought, and consciousness, which are really a metaphor for us to understand our human experience. But it's very powerful, because when we understand this inside out nature of life, we truly do become the human beings we really want to be.
Oh my goodness, Teresa. I absolutely love it. I just think that separate realities is something that almost everybody understands immediately. Because, I mean, have you tried to get your dog outside when it's raining? Your dog has an opinion about that. And just go to the movies with your best friend. You come away loving it, and your friend says, no way, I think it's dumb. So separate realities, we're always gonna have them. But now we have the joy of seeing them and appreciating them for what they are. No more judging. And isn't that fun? Makes life so much lighter.
Yeah, I love it. So I want to just thank you for listening, time and attention. Again, we're Lynn McCright and Teresa Walding, and we have a huge vision for nursing and for the human beings across the world. We really, really want to bring new life to ourselves and our profession, and through us to really impact the world in a very positive way. One little disclaimer, this information, specifically the separate realities, implications, not applications, was brought to life by Dr. Keith Blevins and his wife, Valda Monroe. You can find them at 3principlesparadigm.com. He's doing some amazing work, truly bringing the science of mental life to life. And in saying that, we will have more to say as we go on. If you would like to follow us on our Facebook page or get our emails, please drop that in the chat. We'll put our calendar links in there that will take you to our webpage, and you can sign up there. Thank you.